Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I've spent the last 2+ decades of my life. I'm currently in Atwater. Now, the stories I shared to you is just my time that was there. They might not be in order according to months and years. It's just, I'm trying to take you through my time as I go, but there's so many things that happen there that sometimes I might jump ahead or fall back. So just be patient with me. You know, in the penitentiary, everything you have, you gotta be able to be an entity that can hold it or take it. You gotta be strong enough, be willing enough to do what it takes to take possession of these things. And once you have them, you gotta be able to be willing to do what is necessary to hold it. See, a lot of people that's coming into the system now don't understand that the TVs, the tables, whether it's in the kitchen or in the unit, they were all gotten by blood. Nobody gave it to you. You didn't just come over and say, oh, this is mine, and you get it. Because those are limited commodities. People that live in the penitentiary, they want to be as comfortable as they possibly can. So a lot of people don't like riding the wall. Riding the wall is where you don't have no place to sit, where you don't have no TV to watch. So every morning you come out and you just put your chair by the wall and you ride the wall. Because each section, each TV, each table, no one's gonna allow anybody else just to sit over there and hang out. If you're not part of the car, if you're not part of their gang, if you're not part of their race, you can't be sitting over there watching TV, you know, unless you're me. I mean, I've sat in every TV room. I've sat at tables with Mexicans, with white boys, with blacks. But for the most part, there's always a racial divide and a gang divide, you know. The natives lost their TV on our side in 2B. They lost it in 2B. They lost it everywhere on the east side. When that shit happened with the natives and got into the Midwest, there was no longer any natives on our side. So their tables and their TV became vacant. And when it became vacant, other races swooped in and took the TV. Like the Bloods, they tried to get the TV in our unit in 2A because the natives were no longer there. But the GDs pushed up on them and said, hey, we're the one that went to war over this. It's our TV. And I respect the Bloods. I don't want to say bow down or bow out, but out of respect, the Blood recognized that, yeah, they went and fought for that. They shed blood over that, and that's theirs. But at the same time, if the Blood didn't respect that, it would blow up again because the GDs felt like, hey, they went to war over this already. So now it belongs to them. Well, in 2B, the GDs had the TV over there in 2B too, where the incident started from. But the DCs in there didn't feel like they were just gonna relinquish that property to the GDs. So on this particular day, I'm in the kitchen. Now, after the police got killed, the yard was split. We had morning and afternoon rec with both sides, but in the evening, only one side would get the yard and the other side would get indoor rec. And they would call chow. When they called chow, they take us through the back corridor. Instead of walking across the yard or on the walkway on the yard to chow, they take us behind the unit while the other unit on the east side or the west side, depending on what day it is. On this particular day, the west side was on the compound on the yard. And they're calling us for chow and taking us through the tunnel in the back. So me and Bryson, we coming back out of the chow hall. Like, I'm not privy to the conversation that transpired, but I know the incident was over the TV. If anybody out there from DC know Rob, I don't know his last name, but me and him became pretty good friends. Him, Larry Moe, another guy named Mo, Whitehorse, they all used to sit at my poker table and try to bust my head, When me and Country was partnered, before we became partners, Country would get the morning session because I go work out in the morning, and in the afternoon, I run the table. But after a couple months of that, Country wanted to tap out. He's like, man, I can't beat them, man, because all our tables was just full of DC dudes. Like, they pretty much ran away all my other clientels. Some white boys, some Mexicans, or, people that like to gamble, that play, but they just, the DC as a whole, they can be intimidating. And in that environment, they end up being dominant on the poker table, where they're playing in cahoots or whatever they were doing. They chased away everybody else. So my table just left with DC dudes, and it's a battle. I'm the house. I run the table. I have all the chips, but the house has to play. I get 10% of the pot, but they would raise and back raise. If anybody knows anything about poker, they try to trap me off. So a lot of times in the beginning, I would lose. I would have losing sessions, but just like anything else I do, I adjust. I learn, and pretty soon, I was busting their head, taking all their money. I ran a poker table in Atwater for the whole 7 years I was there, and I never had any issues with it. But I'll get to that story at a later time. On this particular day, I just mentioned these guys because I know them from gambling and from sports and for just being on the yard and interacting with everybody. But we're coming back from the chow hall. We got to walk through the back of the corridor. So when we're coming from the corridor, you hit 2B first, then you hit 2A. So as I'm walking past 2B, I see Rob and about 3 or 4 of his DC homies mob out the unit. And all I can hear Rob saying is like, man, let's go haul at them right now. So I tell Bryce, like, oh shit, something's about to pop off. Because, when certain things come out of certain people, it's serious. Because these, like Rob, like as far as I know him, he just kicks back, play cards and play football tickets and chill. But at the same time, I know he's a serious individual. Just like, a few other people that I know. So when things come out of their mouths, when things are said, when information comes from them, you have to take it to heart. Because these people don't make a habit of puffing out their chest just for the sake of it. Real men don't need to go around running their mouths or acting like they're tough. They just deal with the situation when it arises, because they know that when a situation does arise, it can get serious real fast. So we conduct ourselves in a way to prevent that unless it's necessary. There's nothing wrong with being polite and courteous and understanding. It's the hard, what's the terminology? Hard head make a soft ass. And it's true. When people don't respect the politics, when people don't respect the rules, when people feel that they're above being courteous and polite to other people, well, those people usually have a hard time in the end. So on this particular day, I'm coming out, chow. We're walking to the unit, and here comes Rob and 3, 4 of his DC homies. I can hear it's like, man, fuck that. We just go haul them right now. They ain't, and some other things, but it was just, there's a lot of traffic in the corridor, people coming back and forth from chow. Me, I don't want to get stuck in the corridor, because if something happens in the corridor, they hit the sliders and it blocks off the corridor in different sections. So as soon as we hit the unit, the DCs out of our unit are leaving too, out into the corridor. And I think Rob and them was on their way to the kitchen. So as soon as they got to the kitchen, it blew up. Rob and them take off on the Midwest dudes. So now, with anything that happens in the penitentiary, when it's two groups, two gangs, two different races, it might not have anything to do with you. You might not even know what's going on. But if you look and you see it's your homie taking off on some dude from, and this time, say the DC, and you're DC, and you see your homies get into it with the Midwest, dudes from the Midwest, you're not gonna sit there and wait and ask and what's going on. You're obligated to get up, find yourself a target, and hit them. And that's what happened. Our whole side from the west side, because we're on the east side, my bad. Our whole side on the east side blew up with the DC in the Midwest. We can hear the COs running over here. We can see the COs running over there. Like the whole thing was just a big old clusterfuck. And they're fighting in the kitchen, and then it spread to the hallway, and then into all the units on our side. You know, the only reason it didn't spread to the west side yet is because they probably haven't got word of it, because we're stuck because the yard is split. But there was this Midwest guy named Did It All. You know, everybody's got their little handle, and I don't know where he came up with the name, but he used to sit out there next to my poker table and with a deck of cards and have this game called Jack Deuce 10. And how you play Jack Deuce 10 is, you know, you pull three cards 3 times. And as long as you don't have a jack, a deuce, or a 10, you win, whatever you place down. So he would always be up there. He'd have his dice and his deck of cards and his little blanket over the table, and he would just set the trap. You know, he's like a spider on the web waiting for little flies to come in and try their luck. And that's how he hustled. And he was an older man. Didn't bother nobody, was cool. And anyway, but he's Midwest. Even though he mind his own business, don't have anything to do with the politics that's going on, could care less about the TVs or the tables in the prison, he's still from the Midwest. He's still categorized as part of that entity. So anything that happens with that entity, whether he wants to be a part of it or not, he's involved. So when the smoke clears, when everybody starts coming back from the unit, and this thing happened, it went on for almost an hour, and a couple hours for them to detain the situation. Well, in the back corridor, when the deuces go off, they hit the sliders to cut the sections off so it's easier for them to contain the situation. Well, when they cut off one of the sliders, Did It All got stuck in between those gates by himself with a bunch of DC dudes. And I'm sure you guys can imagine what happened to him. You know, at this time, he was probably in his late 40s, maybe even early 50s. And I don't know his real name, because he just said his name was Did It All, and that's what we call him. He did it all, you know. Anyway, the story was he got smashed out. The DCs beat the living brakes off of him when they were stuck in that court, when we were stuck in that section. At the same time, you know, because they're just hitting the button to close the gate. So whoever gets trapped off where they get trapped off at, you know, you got to deal with the situation. But everybody else, once we started coming from the kitchen and they seen the DCs with an aggressive posture, robbing them, head to the kitchen, everybody knew to get the fuck away from the corridor. Everybody else that had nothing to do with whatever was going on, they hurried up, got in their unit, or they found the wall, a corner where they're sitting by, letting them know, hey, we're not from Midwest, hey, we're not black, whatever. Just try and stay out the way, because when you get caught up in that moment, you have tunnel vision. You're caught up in a trance. And all our natural instinct as living entities is to survive. So in those moments, you're not conscious of anything but what you need to do. And in your mind, in that moment, you're at war. So your body, your mind, your mentality is focused on that and focused on surviving. Now, at the same time that Did It All got stuck in between those corridors, one of the DC got stuck in the corridor with all Midwest. And the same thing happened to him. He got punished, But all this happened because of the TV. When the natives did what they did, the GDs took their TVs over there in 2B. But when the units start filling up with more DC dudes, DC is from out of town. They're a long ways from home out in California. But they're not the type of person that just sit still. Everywhere they go, they always try to make a move for tables and TVs. That's their MO. And in this particular time, it was no different. They didn't want to ride the wall. And I don't know if they had the conversation with the GDs about sharing the TV or just taking the TV. But however it went, it ended up blowing up because, they couldn't resolve their issue with a conversation. Most of the time when things blow up like that, it's because you couldn't resolve your issue with conversation. But a lot of times people understand when they go into a situation that conversation is unnecessary. So if a conversation is unnecessary, then why waste time and breath talking about it? Let's just get to it. And that's when most of the GDs, Midwest, and the DCs got shipped out. That's when DC Tone got shipped out. Rob and a bunch of other ones got shipped out over that incident. Now there's another DC dude named Wack. He was outside playing basketball. From my unit, we can go to the corner and look out onto the yard. And I don't know if they were doing hand signs or whatever, letting Wack know, because he was the only DC that was on the compound on the yard playing basketball. Because it's during chow. They haven't called the yard move yet. But before they call our chow, they let the other side, whoever didn't want to go eat, go to the yard. So Wack was out there shooting the basketball. And we're watching this. Because we're trying to see if it popped off on the yard. There's a bunch of Midwest dudes out there and Wack. Somehow, just his body language, we can see that, he got the signal that it's DC against the Midwest. Wack threw his basketball to the side, walked up to another black dude, like I don't know who he was or whatever, just took off on him, knocked him down, and just started stomping his head out on the basketball court. I don't know if I have any morals to any stories or any episodes that I show, but this particular episode, I'm focused on letting people understand that everything you have in the penitentiary, but these things aren't ours. These things belong to the federal government, but we live in there. So we stake claims to these properties. And the only way that we can have these properties, if every other car understands that we're willing to fight for it. we're willing to fight to keep it. So like people that go in now, they take for granted that they have a place to sit, that they have TV to watch, where they can control it, change the channel. You know, we might think it's just such a small thing for you to lose your life over or for you to risk your life over. But that's all we have. You know, everybody wants to be comfortable. And to be able to be comfortable is to be able to have certain things in there to be able to do your time the way you want it. But through the course of my time, the power structures always change. When a group gets into it, they get shipped out and another group comes in. But like I said, you can mind your P's and Q's all day, every day, but you can't duck the chaos. It's always there. It can be just a dumb-ass argument over sports that got out of hand and somebody took off on somebody, and then there's a chain reaction and the whole place is in a riot. But the DC and the Midwest, they blew up over the TV and 2B. And hell, I don't even remember who ended up with the TV after that. Welcome to the USP.